Hello, once again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Raging Introvert. It is October 9th, 2018, and holy shit. The media, politics, everything is a nonstop deluge of just nonsense. It's pretty overwhelming, and between regular work and just the amount of stuff coming out, haven't had a chance for a while to put something up. But today we're going to work on this ginormous article from the Washington Post, "Democracy Dies in Darkness," with their fact checker analysis blog list compilation of all the thanks there. Um, all the false or misleading claims that Donald Trump has made. The nice thing about this is it's a giant list. We can just kind of go through and pick and choose. We'll start with the low-hanging fruit and see how accurate they are. And if you scroll down here, look at all these claims, these falsehoods and misleading statements by Trump. And you get to the bottom, that part I scrolled down, that was just 50 out of 5,001 claims. So there's a whole shitload of stuff to go through here. But like I said, we're not going to go through the whole list. But this will be a nice, long-term project. When I have time, I can just knock out a couple points here and there, and we'll analyze and see how accurate is the Washington Post. And of course, right at the very top, the very first claim, and I think probably the most common one. I think these might be done in order of, maybe not, but regardless. Trump's quote, "Russian collusion was just an excuse by the Democrats for having lost the election." Now, I don't even know how you fact check something like this, but okay. Politicians kind of hype things up a lot, but I guess what the thing you would check as a fact checker would be, is Russian collusion, are the charges accurate? Has there actually been an investigation or actual legal proceedings against somebody? The excuse by Democrats for having lost the election is a little harder to judge. If you look at Hillary, she's blamed lots of people for why she lost. Let's see what the Washington Post says. Trump repeatedly claims that the Russia investigation is made up. Well, he does claim the Russia investigation is illegitimate and wrong, but the Russia investigation is more widespread than just the collusion, the accusation that Trump's campaign colluded with the Russians somehow. This is a different metric. But the information on Russian efforts to sway the 2016 election was developed by the intelligence community and published in a declassified report in which the agency said they had high confidence it was correct. So it's not absolute, of course, it's high confidence. And again, it's not high confidence that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians to somehow sway the election. The intelligence communities are saying that they have high confidence that the Russians attempted to influence the American election. So these are two different standards. If you were talking about misleading, I would say this is a misleading statement trying to fact check Trump here. You can't, there's no evidence one way or the other. So this is still out for adjudication, whether or not Russian collusion is real, the charges of collusion. But this is obviously misleading because it's a different metric than what Trump's statement is. Here's another interesting one. Trump's statement is, Canada wants to make a deal. This is regarding the revised NAFTA, whatever it's called, USMCA agreement. Canada wants to make a deal. We'll see if we can get them into the deal we already have with Mexico. I think the deal with Canada is coming along very well, and we've all been dealing in good faith, end quote. All right, so there's Trump. And what's the fact checker say? Trump announced an informal trade agreement with Mexico to replace NAFTA, but he needs Congress to approve any changes to NAFTA, and that hasn't happened. Well, okay. that is a true statement. It's kind of irrelevant, but it's a true statement. The U.S. is still negotiating with Canada. Yeah, that's what he's saying here. So it's inaccurate to suggest he has a settled deal with Mexico. Well, he already has he spoke with Mexico. Mexico is happy with the arrangement, and now Trump is trying to get Canada to come on board. Trump isn't saying that the final deal is approved, but he does have a deal with Mexico informally. Now, even to even mention informal here, but that's true. It has to be approved by Congress ultimately. Is that a deal breaker though? If Congress hasn't approved it, is it improper for the president to call it a deal? Would the Washington Post continue that with other deals? For example, the Washington Post here, Trump pulls the United States out of Iran nuclear deal, calling the pact an embarrassment. Congress never approved the Iran nuclear deal. That was President Obama and the Iranians and a few other nations. They all agreed to it, but the Congress never ratified that. It's strange going through this article about Trump pulling out. It doesn't say anything about how it's not an actual deal. It was just an informal deal that Obama did, and it wasn't real. In fact, it says Obama considered the agreement a signature foreign policy accomplishment, calling it the best way to head off the near-term threat of nuclear-armed Iran and a potential opening toward better relations with Tehran after more than 3 decades of enmity. So President Obama said a informal, non-ratified agreement with a foreign country was his signature foreign policy accomplishment. I didn't see the Washington Post anywhere in here saying that that was misleading or a lie because it wasn't a real deal. So with that in mind, I think the Washington Post, again, is a little overboard here, and I award them no points for this accusation. These are kind of squishy, subjective examples in a way. Let's use this one here. It's got some actual numbers in it, so that should make it more objective, more easily measured. If the U.S. sells a car into China, there is a tax of 25%. If China sells a car into the U.S., there's a tax of 2%. Does anybody think that is fair? The days of the U.S. being ripped off by other nations is over. That's Trump's quote, repeated 13 times, by the way. Let's see what the fact checkers say. The tariff is 25%, but Trump is wrong to suggest no American cars are sold in China. Wait, what? Where the hell did you say that? Trump is wrong to suggest no American cars are sold in China. I would say the Washington Post is wrong to suggest Trump suggested that American cars aren't sold in China, since that's not anywhere in the quote that they used. General Motors sells more cars in China, 3.9 million, than in the U.S., 3 million, and saw its China business grow 13%. Who the hell cares? What fucking difference does that make? Okay, maybe I'm missing something. Let's look elsewhere. Maybe someone else has fact checked this. Oh, here's PolitiFact. Is Donald Trump right that China slaps a 25% tariff on American cars? This thing here says mostly true. Okay, so something must be wrong about. Yeah. Chinese cars to the U.S., 2.5% tariff, and our cars to China, 25% tariff. Okay. Trump's figures match up with international trade data, so his figures are correct. And some important details. Numbers are correct. Okay, numerical portion's correct. Statement leaves out okay, here's the context. China exports very few cars to the United States. Who the hell cares how many cars? That's not the point. Is the trade imbalance or the tariff imbalance exists, whether or not the numbers are there. I don't care. I don't care that we import more cars from Mexico and Canada than we do from China. It doesn't make any difference that the tariff rates are not balanced and unfair. Okay, this one might be a little better. Trump cherry-picked the fact by singling out cars instead of a broader category of automobile or car parts. U.S. tariff on light trucks from China is 25%. Okay. So by choosing cars, not trucks, he's cherry-picking data, not telling the entire story. But his numbers are accurate. And it would make sense for Trump to say, hey, this is unfair. We need parity. Why are light trucks different and not cars? Okay. Tariffs on American auto parts are well below 25%. A 10% tariff on automobile engines. Great. Of course, they don't say what the tariff the other way is. So the U.S. still may be getting screwed, just not as badly. So even the PolitiFact says rate is mostly true, even though what he said is absolutely true. Nothing is wrong and incorrect factually with the statement Trump made. And they still only give him a mostly true. That's just fucking unbelievable. And this, anytime someone says Trump is a protectionist or he's against free trade, things like this are what you should be pointing out. This is a stupid difference. It doesn't matter if it's a small amount of cars or a lot of or many cars. This kind of imbalance in tariffs should not exist. I'm glad General Motors is growing their business in China. Chinese income is growing pretty quickly. Their GDP is growing pretty quickly. So I would assume that purchasing cars would grow as well. Imagine how much more competitive U.S. cars would be, and how much faster the growth of U.S. car sales in China would be if instead of a 25% tariff, it was equitable at the 2 or 2.5% rate that Chinese cars coming to the U.S. have. Exactly. It was a big difference. This one's a little interesting in that it's a kind of objective. The quote from Trump, fact check, at real Donald Trump kicked the Nazi out of New York City after 14 years and multiple presidents allowed him to stay, end quote. This is in reference to an old Nazi prison guard who was ordered to be deported, but no countries would take him. The Washington Post analysis says that Trump is exaggerating his role here. Well, okay, politicians do exaggerate their successes sometimes. Let's see. You could, I suppose, depending on how egregious it is, classify an exaggeration as misleading. No president, quote, allowed him to stay, end quote. Rather, after a federal immigration judge ordered he be deported in 2004, American officials failed to convince any country to accept him. Trump can claim credit for securing the deportation of 95-year-old Yakio Paliu. Trump can claim credit for securing the guy's deportation, which, okay, whether it's kicking the Nazi out or deporting the Nazi. I mean, this is a more colorful way of saying it, but ultimately it's the same thing. You're getting the Nazi out of your country. And American officials for the last two administrations failed to convince any country to accept him. Now, is that the previous president's fault? Well, I mean, as a president, as a leader, you're kind of responsible for the successes and failures of your administration. Now, maybe they didn't think it was a big problem. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe it was a low priority. Regardless, when it says multiple presidents allowed him to stay, that means they either the other presidents didn't make it a big enough priority and didn't push for enough or didn't care. By failing to get this person out of the country, they allowed him to stay. Trump, it says here, Trump can claim credit for securing the deportation. How did he do that? He did that by pressuring other nations, Germany in this case, and getting them to accept the person. So yes, Trump didn't allow it because he didn't want it, and he expended enough capital or pressure or whatever to get it done. So this Again, the closest they can get to is trying to say this is misleading somehow. But it absolutely happened because Trump wanted it to happen and because Trump forced the issue, whereas other presidents at best were apathetic and didn't care. Although, again, even the BBC in their article about it talks about how why did deportation take so long. U.S. authorities were unable to persuade Germany, Ukraine, or Poland to take him in. He never had German citizenship. I'm assuming he must be Polish or from the Ukraine. Again, previous administrations failed to persuade other countries. Trump the destroyer, persuades. May not be the nice way, but it's interesting when people talk about how Trump damages or ruins international relations and hurts the United States standing in the world. This isn't like high school activities club or something, some kind of popularity contest. When you talk about international relations and standing in the world, ultimately that boils down to is, can you get other countries to do what you want when they don't want to? I mean, it's easy to get other countries to participate and help you in something that they want to do. But if they don't want to do it, the standing and power of your country and the respect those other countries give to your country, that's the actual measure. And when previous administrations failed to get this guy deported, and Trump steps in and gets him deported, that is an actual measurement of U.S. standing and U.S. power and influence in the world. And obviously under Trump, those are going up, not down. I thought this next one, wages are growing at the fastest pace in nearly a decade, would be a pretty easy one to check. And I know I've seen in the last 6 months or so several articles talking about how economists had always been worried that the increase in wages had been stagnating and there wasn't the growth, and that was the one lagging indicator, and recently it had been growing. So I thought it'd be easy to find. It's not. The Washington Post's quote, their fact check says, this is wrong. Wages have been rising steadily since 2014 for a gain of 7.3% over the past 3 years. Now again, your spidey sense should be tingling at this point. Trump's quote here doesn't really give a time frame, but you would think sometime during his presidency. And then the fact check is taking a period of like 3 years. It's not, it's apples and oranges. It's not the same thing. I mean, maybe not 4 years, like in 4 years. So you could say the 2 or 3 of those years could be slow, and then the last 2 could be really fast. And over the average, it comes out okay. It's just a strange measurement trying to do a fact check. I went to the full story, and it gets even more confusing, talking about there's different ways of measuring it. Is it hourly wage? Is it weekly earnings? Those measure the same thing. Does it take into account inflation? If you subtract inflation from the wages earned to get real wages, then that could be different. I don't know. I can't. I mean, it's difficult to say. It looks like it may have been exaggerated. It just kind of depends on what data you pick, what time frame you pick, how you measure it. However, one interesting thing I did see, this website, Trading Economics, has a lot of different economic data and charts and graphs that you can plug up. So this is United States wages and salaries growth. Okay. And, Trump would have been elected or inaugurated somewhere in here. And it's interesting to see how towards the end of the Obama administration, wage growth tanked. And then it had been kind of wild before, some fairly significant swings. And then once Trump came into office, it has stayed in positive territory, and the variability has decreased quite a bit. That's kind of interesting. I don't know why that would be, but more interesting, when you scroll down at the bottom here, you can look at other countries as well, and it's by default on the G20. And if you look, the last wage growth evaluation and the previous to that, look at that. The United States, 4.79% wage growth. The previous was 4.66. The UK, our Brexit brethren who were assured that their decision to leave the EU is going to be economically catastrophic. 2.6, 2.4, the previous one. So those are pretty strong numbers. Let's look at the rest of the EU area. Switzerland, 0.8, 0.4. Japan, 0.9, 1.6. Germany, 0.5, 1.1. France, 0.7, 0.1%. The Euro area in general, 1.9, 1.8. If you're looking for economic indicators to see which approach is healthier, this would be a strong one. And the two nations that are trying to leave these old methods of doing business and trying to be more economically dynamic and diverse are doing much better. Just of interest. Just those numbers are much stronger. They really jumped out at me overall. This next one's pretty funny too, though. Quote, more Americans are now employed than ever before in the recorded history of our country. Think of it. Today, right now, we have more people working than have ever worked. Oh, he didn't say ever worked in the United States. He could mean the world, and obviously that's false. Let's see what the Washington Post says. Of course there are more Americans working. That's because there are more Americans today than ever before. True. More meaningful measure health, job market, blah, 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 blah. The unemployment rate, or the share of people who don't have jobs, was at 3.9% in August, and that wasn't a record low. I figured this would be pretty easy to look up as well. 3.9 in August isn't a record low. So I did a quick Google search, and not this one. U.S. unemployment rate is now the lowest it's been this century. And I thought, well, that's pretty big news. It is a record low. And talk about misleading. My brain was thinking, century, 100 years. No, it's just, in the 2000s. So lowest it's been in 18 years, which doesn't sound as impressive as century. So I think that's more of a misleading headline than anything else. It's factually true. I think that's a better example of misleading because it is factually true. Lowest in a century, in this century. But the century is only 18 years old. I think the bottom line Trump is trying to say is that the economy is doing very well under his stewardship. And that's difficult to argue, at least as far as it comes to employment. Part of my other Google search, this article did come up. The lowest unemployment rate was 1.2% in 1944, in the middle of World War II, when we were at total war. So, I think it's going to be very difficult any time in the history of our country to beat that, unless we have a World War III where the entire nation is once again mobilized. But outside of those extreme measures, that's in some ways a misleading thing to try to judge yourself against. Trump's economy is doing very well right now, and however you want to look at it, I think this statement is relatively accurate. It's not misleading. It's it's true. You could say it's inane, unnecessary to say, since obviously, like they say, there's more Americans working. But the kernel that he's trying to say is the economy is doing well and lots of people are working, and that is true. Let's take a look at this one. Canada, again, this is Trump speaking. Canada has not treated us well, and big barriers. They pay, if there's a 300%, think of it, 300% tariff if you sell dairy products into Canada. It probably sounds better in context and when it's being spoken by Trump, but what he's basically saying is there's a 300% tariff on U.S. dairy products being sold in Canada. Okay, let's see what the Washington Post says. Canada does have high dairy tariffs once a quota is reached. Good. Okay, so we're going to say Trump's correct. That's good. Just as the United States props up sugar, well, who the hell cares? Yeah, sure, whatever. It's not saying Trump's statement is incorrect. It's just the U.S. does the same thing with other products. Irrelevant. Misleading, I guess, would be the Washington Post term. But Canada's overall tariffs are lower than the United States. Their overall tariffs on other products. Again, it's irrelevant in when you're looking at Trump's statement. 300%. And Canada made large dairy concessions in the TPP agreement negotiated by Barack Obama, which Trump pulled out of early days of his presidency. Okay, again, irrelevant. And that just shows why Trump is correct to hammer the Canadians on it to try to get in his new revisions to NAFTA. If the Canadians already agreed to it once, let's put those same agreements into a new trade agreement that Trump will agree with. The United States has, quote, a favorable quota, according to the Brookings Institution, meaning it runs a trade surplus on dairy products. Yeah, obviously, we produce more dairy than Canada, which is why we're exporting it to them and not importing it from them. So that's irrelevant. And no dairy products are sold to Canada outside the quota, so no U.S. exports really pay a high tariff. So what it's saying is we're allowed to sell 1 million gallons of dairy to Canada at a low, reasonable rate, and anything over that gets charged the 300% super high tariff. And since no one sells over the 1 million gallons, nobody gets charged the super high tariff. So really the super high tariff doesn't exist because it doesn't actually impact any of the stuff we're selling, which is retarded because obviously it impacts. We just don't. We have plenty. We could sell much more to Canada, but we don't because of the insanely high tariffs. According to the World Bank, here are the average tariff rates charged by. Who cares? Oh, look, Canada charges on average less than these other nations, but it doesn't fucking matter. We're talking about dairy here, and it's bullshit. And Trump wants to adjust it in a revised NAFTA treaty. Talk about fucking misleading. All of this stuff here is fucking bullshit. Misleading bullshit. And Trump is speaking absolute truth here. Democracy dies in darkness, my ass. Speaking of misleading, this one's interesting too. Trump's quote from, it just says source remarks. Veterans unemployment recently reached, does this dash mean there's stuff that was taken out? I don't know. Its lowest in more than 20 years, and that's going up rapidly. Oh, yeah, so maybe they must have cut something out of there. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Although sometimes when Trump speaks off the cuff, which is most of the time, it's train of thought and doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes. Veterans unemployment recently reached its lowest in more than 20 years, and that's going up rapidly. Okay? The Washington Post says the unemployment rate for veterans in August 2018, this is September, so okay, was 3.8%, which is up 0.1% for a year ago. Here's that meticulous fact-checking and editorial precision from a major newspaper. Okay. Unemployment rate for veterans in 2018 was 3.8%. Is that a record low? Well, it's up 0.1% from a year ago. So was that a record low? Maybe he was talking about that? I don't know because the Washington Post doesn't tell me. So let's do a quick Google and we'll just look up record veteran unemployment rate. Oh, hey, look, it brings us to an August 2018 article in Military Times. Unemployment for post 9/11 vets hits record low. Okay. Unemployment rate for post 9/11 veterans hit a record low last month. The lowest it's ever been, according to government statistics. Okay, so this seems to... I don't know why the Washington Post couldn't do a quick Google search like I did and find out the context of what Trump was talking about. Trump probably either read himself or had someone mention to him, hey, look at this. Record veteran unemployment rate. Good job, Mr. President. Veterans are a major constituency of ours, and our booming economy has helped them greatly. And he's just repeating that news and passing it on during this interview. And the Washington Post is too dumb, too lazy, or too dishonest to actually research the point. Again, even here, even in their fact check, they don't say what was the record low unemployment rate for veterans. They don't tell me. They say in August it was 3.8%. That's up 0.1% from a year ago. So August 2017 was 3.7%, and the record low unemployment rate for veterans is, they don't tell me. Unfucking believable. Well, we've hit the half-hour mark, so I should wrap it up. We'll finish up with this last one here. It's from after a meeting Trump had with Vladimir Putin. Trump's comment is, quote, "My Putin meeting was one of the best meetings I've had, was a tremendous success, but they made it sound like it wasn't. What the hell do?" That's interesting. I wonder if that's actually what he said. That's what the Washington Post here is reporting that he said. In fact, repeated 2 times. Apparently, Trump had a stroke and was intoxicated and slurred out Nancy Pelosi-type nonsense twice. Let's see if we can get some other media source that corroborates that. I've saved you the pain of watching me go through the Google searches, but no, I can't find anybody else with this or even a similar quote from Trump regarding his meeting with Putin. So I think the Washington Post may be the ones at fault here. Maybe someone should fact check them on putting words into the president's mouth. But I think we can parse from this gobbledygook what Trump probably said. Using Trumpian grammar and diction, he probably said something along the lines of, "My meeting with Mr. Putin was one of the best meetings I've had. It was a tremendous success." But they, the media, made it sound like I wasn't doing anything, or I don't know what the hell I was doing. I can't imagine him saying that, actually. He probably wouldn't drop hell. He was probably just attacking the media for saying that he was not being hard enough on the Russians somehow. Probably about collusion or something. Let's see what the Washington Post says. They say, "No announcements were made after the Trump-Putin meeting." What the hell does that have to do with anything? I assume what they're saying is, since there was no announcement afterwards of some major agreement or deal or initiative, that the meeting was not a tremendous success. That assumes that the Washington Post knows what Trump's goals or objectives were for this meeting, which, of course, they don't. Only Trump and his close advisor would know what they were hoping to accomplish with this meeting. So it's entirely possible that everything Trump was after was accomplished. And no major, maybe it's not something for public release at this point. The president declined to publicly admonish Putin for meddling with the 2016 election. Ooh. What is Trump's goal? Again, like I just said, we don't know exactly. But in general, he has made some comments. His general premise is to de-escalate tensions between Russia and the U.S. and between Russia and the West. He does not view Russia as a significant military threat. I mean, they are a military threat, but they're not a significant one. It's not the Cold War anymore. NATO has nothing to fear from Russia militarily. U.S. by itself has nothing to fear from Russia militarily. They're a regional power. They're not a superpower anymore. So what would be accomplished by the president, if that's his goal, trying to de-escalate and lower tensions between our nations, what would be the goal of him publicly admonishing Putin and trying to, humiliate him in front of the world media? Nothing. Trump gets nothing out of doing that and only hurts his initiatives. So just because the Washington Post is wish casting and trying to hurt the president, I don't know if that's the case. Do they really want war and tensions between Russia and the U.S.? Or do they honestly believe that Russia somehow swung the election. They were the difference, and they denied Hillary. I don't know. I mean, they probably had some influence. The Russians have always been interested in U.S. politics. No one, even the Russians, honestly thought Trump was going to win. So I don't know why they would put a lot of effort into trying to tank Hillary when, again, going into election night, I thought Hillary was a shoo-in. Everybody thought Hillary was going to win. So it's just strange. But regardless, it's embarrassing for the Washington Post to even attempt to take this claim and fact check it. What the hell is there to fact check? This is just Trump talking. Well, was it really one of his best meetings? Let's rate all of his meetings. He says it was a tremendous success, but how tremendous was it? There was no announcement made afterwards, so it couldn't have been that tremendous. I mean, are you fucking kidding me? And then just to throw this in there, like it couldn't have, this meeting couldn't have been great if Trump didn't call Putin out in public for meddling in our election. Like, fuck you, Washington Post. What the hell are you talking about? And then this counts. This repeated 2 times. So apparently this counts as 2 lies or misleading claims out of the 5,001. It's just fucking nonsense. It's just pathetic. Oh, God. Well, this has been fun. It's been fun to vent, to air my grievances for a bit. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments below. I know I don't have many viewers or followers, so it's mostly just for me. But if anyone does have any thoughts, I appreciate seeing them too. So thank you, and have a good day.